If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniak. When I was very young, 6 or 7, I had an imaginary friend. His name was Scratch. He was a cat with a missing eye and a charcoal colour coat. I was a very anxious child. My mother said that it helped me cope while growing up. She said that she'd had a cat like that once, that she had been an anxious child also. I didn't care. It meant I had someone to chatter to. Scratch told me his name, but I never remembered him saying anything else. He would just stay paddling alongside me as I told him anything I could. It was a tough childhood, but my mother did what she could. She scraped by as a secretary and ate ramen while I had a few pieces of green on my plate. She always used to wear this cheap dollar store necklace, and as I grew older, I began to rationalize with how unappealing it looked. But she wore it so determinedly. She was the kind of woman to make the best out of a bad situation. Scratch came and went in my life, and I missed him, but I tried to make friends as best I could. I had a few friends at school, and although I wasn't one of the popular ones, people didn't pick on me. I was just there. Now when I was 12, I saw Scratch again. I told my mother carefully. She laughed and smiled, almost forced. "You were always an anxious child," she said, and that was the end of it. When I was about 16, he showed up again. He looked different, crouched in the tree outside my window. His arms and legs had elongated, and the whole of his eye was hollowed and bloodied. I told my mom over dinner. I was a bit concerned by this, trying to sound as unaffected as possible. She pushed her lips. Her hands were gripping the chair as she is sitting on it. I didn't know what to say and knew she didn't either. 18 or 19 was the third time Scratch come back. I was walking back from a party along a street alone. I know it's a stupid thing to do, but we lived in a safe town and I never had any trouble before. The street lamps flickered as I pulled my coat out and put it over me. Then, there he was. He's even bigger now, the blood pouring down his sides, deep fangs pushing out of his gums as he looks at me with his one eye. "Can you talk?" I whispered. I felt as though I was losing my mind. There was nothing but hair rustling through the tree branches and the electric crackle of the street lamps above. I turned. This can't be real. Then a soft voice come from behind. "We have to play hide and seek." I whispered back. I don't want to play." I could barely speak. "I'm afraid." Scratch paused. "You do not have a choice. There's something hidden that I want you to find. Find it in a year." The wind curled its fingers around my neck. Scratch's last words drifted across the empty street. "Or you'll be sorry that you didn't." I turned. Nothing but tarmac and silence. I was still froze. I was frozen by fear, until the sharp buzz on my phone pierced the night. "Hello?" I answer, aching to hear a human voice. Is this Poppy Greenfield speaking? Speaking? Yes. I'm afraid you need to come down to Churchill Hospital immediately. Your mum has had an accident, leaving her in critical condition. I felt my blood thunder in my ears. It was a heart attack. Relatively uncommon in women her age. The doctors told me as I stood there lifelessly. I watched her die, but this is not before she wordlessly pressed her old dollar store necklace into my hand. It was blackened and dented from age, but I pressed it to my palm. Now I never forgot about what Scratch told me, but without my mum, I didn't care about consequences. What was anything worth besides her? The year went by in a blur, and I don't remember much of it. A few snapshots of me waking up in a strange bed with a splitting headache are all I have. I guess this is a strange kind of person grief can turn you into. Then I met Charlie and everything changed. I'd never met anyone who loved me so patiently and tirelessly. Within 6 months, I moved in. Within a year, I couldn't imagine living without him. Now, sometimes I would see Scratch and I'd feel as though I couldn't breathe, or I'd have a nasty fall the day after, but I accepted it as a strange coincidence. Maybe I was crazy. I told myself the night after I dreamed of him, I broke my foot. Maybe it didn't matter, as long as I can ignore it. One night, however, this changed. I wake up in a cold sweat. My cotton shirt stuck to me. The wind had blown the door open, and I could see into the living room, out to the garden. The double doors are open, swinging against their hinges, and I saw him. Scratch was huge. His long muzzle had cracked as it had grown and split the soft fur. His teeth were long and stained red. In bed next to me, Charlie started to convulse. His eyes shot open, milky white, gasping for air. "Please no," I said. "You didn't listen to me," Scratch said in a dark voice. "You didn't even try." "What do you want?" I cried. Charlie's breathing was shallowing. His eyes rolled back. His hand went cold. I stared at the cat, in its one eye, blooded and mangled, staring back at me. "You have to find it now." It spoke in a deep rasp. It now turns and hunches down. It will not let me tell you where it is. I say, I don't know what your stupid game is or how to play it. I don't know what you want me to do or find. Scratch seems smaller now. His claws are broken and bent. The way he stood left his weight off a leg that I now saw as mangled as the rest of him. I squinted, trying to make out what the shimmer was behind him. I recoiled. Deep in the darkness of the trees were claws, deep stretching, spindly black fingers reaching towards us. Scratch looked on, unblinking. "I gave it to your mother once." That's one green eye glowing in the dark for a moment. "Please." He had barely uttered the words before the claws reached him, the darkness enveloping him. Staggering to my feet, a low moan came out from across the landing. I hear Charlie. The darkness shifted in one swaying motion, and I ran. My bare feet slipping against the floor. I made it into the bedroom and locked the door behind me, the darkness slamming against the wood. He had given it to my mother, she to me. I ran to the dresser, my heart hammering in my chest, and I threw it open. The bottom drawer, the necklace lay, and my hand scrambled over it, fumbling with the strap. The door flew open, and my breath left my body. I now have the necklace. Why is nothing happening? The creature standing in front of me was so huge and monstrous. I don't think I could find words to describe how big it was now. It's like looking back into a hole. I could feel the suffering of all the souls it's eaten. I gripped the necklace tight in my hands. My fingers slid over a small groove on the back of it. It has a secret panel. I cracked the necklace open, crying from fear. Inside is a phrase written in a strange language of which I cannot remember. All I remember is screaming it. Then, nothing but floating through a void. Seeing nothing, feeling nothing but quiet. I woke up in a hospital bed next to Charlie. The kind doctors told me that we'd been there a while because of a gas leak, and that we're lucky to be alive. They said it causes hallucinations and strange dreams. The words to tell them, however, couldn't come out of me. It was just not right. Then, the years went by. The memories grew dimmer as the happiness grew. We got married and moved away from the city. I felt like I finally had my life where I wanted it to be. It was a happy occasion when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter Julia. Almost forgotten, you see, except today, when I woke up. There's a cheap dollar store necklace on my front porch. When I woke up, my daughter, for her breakfast, she stretched and smiled and told me with bright optimism that she had a visitor in the night. An old beat-up cat scratched and called her name until she'd listen, and they chatted. "You're one anxious child." I felt my mouth form the words that were not mine. Something isn't right. I keep the dollar store necklace around my neck. It's all I can do. When Julia's around, I tell her it's my favourite in the world, and how it'll be hers someday. I've tried to write letters, but my hands won't form the words. I know that you'll never see this, but there's two things I'm certain of. The first thing's that, as long as I'm breathing, I'll always leave a bowl of milk outside for Scratch, no matter how much this may sound stupid. And second, you'll get this one day and understand.
Never would I have thought that I'd be writing one of these, but here I am, sitting at home in my dark room, typing my life away. My name is Robbie Wowers. I'm gonna save the introduction and not tell you about my life story, but how my world has changed on the 3rd of July 2017. I'm a lifeguard working at a public pool. I won't say where because that would narrow it down to 2 possible pools, and that information has to stay secret. I make decent money and have no complaints in life. It was the morning of the 3rd of July, the day before the 4th obviously. Unfortunately, it was the first Monday of the month, super chlorination. On Super C days, we load up the pool with a lot of chlorine and let it do its thing. We also do in-services to brush up on our training and skills. Like any normal morning, I got up and did my routine before heading to work. When I walked in, everyone was already there. We always have our staff meetings before we go into the training stuff. After the staff meeting, I went to the bathroom. When I returned, I noticed everyone hovering around one of the girls, Sarah. I overheard someone say, "We're really gonna miss you. Just know you're doing a great thing." As soon as I walked in, everyone returned back to their seats and we started the training. There was something off. Everyone was treating Sarah like it was her last day. Her last day was supposed to be in August when the summer ended. While training, I felt like I was on the outside of a window looking in. Everyone spoke about past memories they had, specifically with Sarah. I used to just keep myself to myself, and I don't care. But my curiosity was burning up inside. Was she leaving? Why so soon? Where's she going? I did not say a word. After finishing up our CPR portion of the training, our supervisor, Vanessa, told us we did a good job and started to dismiss us. I was confused because we usually continue training with different scenarios. She was cutting this training session short. I didn't care. I was actually relieved that I got to enjoy the rest of my day. I said goodbye to everyone, and as I was walking out, Sarah stopped and gave me a hug. I found this really weird, because we were actually scheduled to work the next day's shift together. I hugged her back and went off with a confused look on my face. By far the weirdest day so far. At this point, it was 2 PM, and I had the rest of the day to relax and exercise. I drove home and decided to go for a run. After returning from what seemed like one of the best runs I'd had in a while, I decided to text one of my friends, and also a co-worker, Jeremy. At this moment, I noticed that my wallet was missing. I had left it back at the pool. The text I sent read, "Yo, wanna chill? I think I left my wallet in the pool. I'm about to go get it when we can grab a bite." I found it weird and very un-Jeremy-like, but he texted back within 10 seconds. The text read, "No, just get it tomorrow, bro. I can't chill tonight. Gotta study for this final." Another confusing moment. Finals weren't for another 3 weeks, and why doesn't he want me to go back to the pool? My curiosity was getting the best of me. I wouldn't have gone if I had some food at the house. I drove 20 minutes back to work. My weird day just got weirder. As I pulled up to the pool, I noticed the gates you could normally see through are blocked with what seemed like black tarp. I couldn't see inside at all. I pull up towards the parking lot and think, what on earth is happening? Everyone's car was still here. It was 6:30, we were dismissed at 2. I parked my car as far as possible, and when all Nancy drew in that place, I couldn't find an opening where I could peek in. I had a plan that would allow me to get a good look inside and hopefully not get caught. I very slowly walked to my car, grabbing my hip pack. Grabbing the keys from my pack, I made my way to the back of the entrance. It opened a door that led to the pump room, where it was dark and loud. I made my way towards the only light breaking into the room from the small square window in the door. I remember my stomach dropping to my feet when I looked through and found all my co-workers standing around the pool. They looked like they were just saying goodbye to Sarah. At this point, I didn't know what to think. I did not know what was going to happen next. I just knew that whatever it was, I wasn't invited. Not a care went through my mind. Why would I want to be back at work at 6 PM when I didn't have to? At this point, it seemed like I was the weirdo, spying on a couple of people through a small glass window. I wondered what they would say if they caught me. While staring at the group, I wondered, how much weirder can it really get? I spoke too soon. Vanessa was the last person to give her goodbyes. She gave Sarah a hug and kissed her on the forehead. I could not make out what they were saying, and I didn't want to open the door. They would definitely hear the sound of the pumps. They all proceeded to make a circle around Sarah. I noticed Jeremy reaching for something, and to my surprise, he pulls out what seemed to be a 6-inch knife from his pocket. He then moved the blade to his hand, cutting it open. At this moment, I mumbled under my breath, "What the hell? These people are crazy." He passed the blade around one by one. They cut their hands open too. All but one person, Sarah. She was in the middle of the circle. I will never forget the smile she had on her face. She genuinely looked happy, like it was her wedding day. Not even close. I've seen something like this while browsing the internet late at night. I didn't want to believe what was happening. I was hoping it was a dream. My eyes were peeled on Sarah and her happy expressions, which got creepy really fast. As expected, they all started to hold their bloody hands together, and it looked like a weird sacrificial ceremony. At this point, I was frozen, couldn't move at all. I should have taken my phone out. I should have recorded everything that was happening. I was paralysed. It only got worse. They were chanting something weird that I couldn't figure out. After 30 seconds of chanting, they stopped and started to take their clothes off. At this point, I should have left. I couldn't. I was frozen. They all jumped into the pool. Everyone but Sarah. I could see the blood colouring the pool around them. Sarah slowly started to slide into the water, joining them. She treaded water in the middle of the pool while they all held hands. After 10 seconds of chanting, I could tell that this was far more than what I was expecting. The eyes of everybody turned black. Everyone but Sarah. She looked normal at this point. I still couldn't take my eyes off them. I also didn't want to. Looking closer, I noticed that Sarah was the only one treading water. Everyone else was standing. They had no flotation, no arm movement, and no leg movement. How is this possible? I thought to myself. Nothing could prepare me for what happened next. Minutes passed, and they were still chanting in a circle. I sit here thinking to myself, what would have happened if I called the cops? What would happen if everyone knew what happened that day? I definitely did not want to be on the news. How about if there's others out there? They would definitely come find me. After what seemed like forever I was staring through that window, they finally stopped chanting. I will never forget their blacked out eyes. Jeremy was turned facing towards me, and I could see his lips as he mouthed the words of "make the sacrifice." That's when the sacrifice took place. I won't go into details. I almost puked. I have never seen anything like this in my entire life. She was sacrificing her life. For what? She was dead. I couldn't believe my eyes. Immediately after Sarah took her own life, I ran out of the pump house. I didn't care to close the door behind me. I would soon later regret this. I ran as fast as I could to my car and drove off. While driving, I looked left and saw them carrying Sarah out the water. I'm surprised I didn't get pulled over on my way home. When I got home, I went in my room and locked the door. I lay there for the next hour thinking about what the hell just happened. Before I knew it, I was asleep. I woke up the next day feeling great. It was one of those days when you wake up feeling refreshed. Until I looked at my phone and saw a text from Jeremy. It reads, "Hey, sorry for ditching you yesterday. I really need to study. Can't fail another class." At that moment, I remembered everything that happened. It all came back to me like a ton of bricks hitting me over the head. I didn't want to get up or even move at all, but I had to go to work. I needed to pay my bills. Now, they didn't see me spying on them the day before. I could just acted like everything was normal, and that's exactly what I did. I came into work with a smile on my face, but burning on the inside. I got in early, and I could see who was working with me that day. Certainly not Sarah. She killed herself last evening. Or so I thought. My heart dropped to China as I saw her walking towards the facility like nothing ever happened. She was okay. Was it all a dream? Definitely not. It was all real. I remembered every single moment of that day. How the hell could I forget? She was definitely dead. I don't know how I did it, but I just acted as if everything was normal. Sarah walked in with Jeremy. "Great, I'm working with a creature of the undead and a Satan-worshipping lunatic." They both greeted me and we went on to do our morning opening duties. As the day went on, I tried to avoid Sarah at all costs, but I couldn't do it. It was weird. She certainly wasn't acting normal. She most definitely wasn't Sarah. Me and my husband moved into a house not that long ago, maybe a week or so. And ever since, odd things have been happening. It started the second day we were here. We started hearing and seeing strange things in the house. Hearing footsteps, doors and drawers opening and shutting, etc. We decided to ask the realtor about the house's history and if it had happened before. And like most realtors, she pretended that it has a perfect history. So we asked neighbours. Each one said the people who lived here were driven to insanity, and two of the neighbours said that they recalled seeing and hearing abnormal things on the property. One neighbour, if you count a wife and a husband as one neighbour, will describe the sounds and sight for us. I will never forget Julie and Richard's conversation with us about the happenings. There were screams, obviously those who lived there, and sometimes odd scratching noises, Richard said. We would see some type of being in the window. The last people to live here started to ask us for advice, but they didn't take our suggestions. Instead, they used demonic rituals to talk to it, though I don't know why they would have communicated with a demon purposefully. Julie had recounted before briskly changing the subject. I don't know why. After nudging the realtor a bit more, she mentioned how everyone who lived in the house went in normal and had the same type of family and personality as us, she specifically mentioned, and came out insane or as dead bodies on stretchers being loaded into an ambulance with many cuts and scratches. Naturally, we were purely and truly horrified. Now I realise I am more than my husband. I say this because he's changed. He's different now. The difference started one night. We had a lot of opening and closing drawers and doors, and loads of footsteps. We woke up that night and screamed loudly, which must have been what the neighbours were talking about. I certainly woke up and tried to find out why he was screaming a scream that went on for an entire minute. But it wasn't an angry scream, a sad one indicating pain. Wasn't of a victim or enemy, but instead of no emotion. I've never heard such a long and emotionless scream. I tried to get him to stop, but he wouldn't. After a minute, it went on and he looked at me, with the same type of emotion as the scream carried. None. I could have sworn his eyes were the blankest I've ever seen them, like he wasn't really there. Like he, Bobby himself, had gone. He acted like this for days, and he had the same nightly routine of screaming and then staring at me in silence. No matter how much it happened, I just couldn't get used to it. The longer it went on, the worse things became. Once I even woke up lying on the table. Another time he locked me in a room, all without reason or emotion. But one night it got worse. So much worse. He did his scream, then stared at me and went to bed like usual. And so did I. Only to be woken up 50 minutes later, being dragged by an invisible force to a closet. After 5 minutes in the closet, I heard Bobby, the real Bobby, scream his real scream of fear. I started to wonder what happened to him when the door, and I kid you not, broke off its hinges, as if someone threw it, flew right across the hall, hitting Bobby right in the middle of his head. That's when I brought my phone to type this and call 911, and ran straight to Richard and Julie's house. I'm staying there now, for the second night in a row typing this. Why am I typing this now? Because I was recounting it all in my head. What just happened? I'm house hunting again, hoping the next isn't haunted like this. Straight to Richard and Julie's house. I'm staying there now, for the second night in a row typing this. Why am I typing this now? Because I was recounting it all in my head. What just happened? I'm house hunting again, hoping the next isn't haunted like this. But if you have any idea that your house is haunted, leave immediately before it gets worse.